Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in to Machine Learning track on the 4Developers conference. I'm Paweł, and I'm here today to give you a bit of insight on using data for government benefits. The power of data and algorithm has transformed the global communication, social relations, and technologies with terms like machine learning, artificial intelligence, now determine what we see online, where we live, where we work, and sometimes even what we eat. Government usually lag behind technology capabilities of the private sector, but several countries are now combining public and private data to make critical decisions. And no government have more ambitious plan to use the power of data than the Chinese government. In Western mass media, this plan is described as Big Brother meet big data. Journalists from developed countries picture it as Orwellian dystopia, world of full surveillance, control, made by evil government to enslave people. Chinese perception is way different, because Chinese media described idea in two ways: as punishing individuals and bringing harmony to society. The most common view is fixing societal problems with power of technology. And when I dwell into the subject, it turned out that the truth is complicated. In one sentence, social credit system is national reputation system being developed by the Chinese government. And the root of the system go back to early 90s as a part of attempt to develop personal banking and financial rating system. Those rating systems are present in many other countries, like for instance, USA, UK, or Australia. Among the goals was to facilitate lending in rural areas because individuals and small enterprises lacked documented financial histories. So they are unable to get financial credit from a commercial bank. The first blueprint of this system were drafted in 2007, but in 2011, there has been a shift in objective from a financial credit to panacea for a broad set of social political issues. First of all, the original phrase is very difficult to render accurately into English. I'll spare you hearing me trying to pronounce it. Just remember that the second part has a much more wider meaning than the credit term in English. This phrase typically does not come with a value judgment. It can also mean honor, confidence, in general has a sense of being worthy, sense of worthiness. The social credit in this sense point to worthiness in a society, not being simply worthy in a financial manner. So official goals of the social credit system appears to have little to do with financial credit. It is construction of sincerity in government affairs, commercial sincerity, social sincerity, judicial credibility, which is a more call to traditional Confucian virtues than a vision of high-tech governance. In my opinion, we should call this system a social trust system, not a social credit system. But I will stay with this term social credit and use the short form of SCS. Authorities in Beijing claim that the system is created out of necessity because it's well known that China is a low trust society. Chinese society is suffering some kind of moral emptiness as a result of economical and social changes since the reform in the 1970s. The growing wealth and economically developed regions came at a price, because they suffered the most from insufficient supervision of market actors, environmental and food safety scandals, violation of labor law, widespread corruption, as also as tax evasion, factory accident, food and drug safety scares, fraud, academic dishonesty, and of course counterfeiting of goods. There is also a problem of trust among people and trust between people and institutions. In general, people trust more central government than local governments. The big picture is to build a harmonious society, as it was stated in a plan. And to achieve this, mechanism must be made to encourage confidence and punish breaches of confidence. And the government want to accomplish this accomplish three stated goals: more efficient allocation of resources, because scare of resources is part of everyday life in China, and current distribution strategies are seen as unfair. Second goal is restoring trust in public, because, as I mentioned, trust between people and trust between people and institution is very low. And the third goal is re-education of people. So new system could work also as something similar to self-censorship, because people will feel constant as being surveilled. A social credit system can be divided into two main subsystems. First one, which government can use to assess individuals, social organization, and government organizations. And the second one, which can be used by government to assess enterprises. Only Chinese Communist Party organizations are exempt. Part of local government can be still assessed. And what was really surprising for me, because we mostly hear about authorities controlling people, it turned out that today the companies are the main target of this system. A number of this slide showed mentions of target group across documents in related documents published in last 17 years. And 73% of these documents were focused on companies, while about 13% were focused on individuals or government entities. This is the part of overall policy in increasing trust in commercial product and services made by the China market economy. And it's worth to mention that the foreign enterprises and organizations which have registered present in China are still included in this system in equal terms with their Chinese counterparts. To build such a complicated system, there is a need for data. In China, government agencies and private companies are collecting enormous amount of data about finances, social media activities, credit history, health record, and online purchases, or even legal matters or people you associate with. Additionally, there are recorded information about volunteer activity, adherence to traffic rules, shopping habits, and reliability of information posted or reposted online. So posted and reposting news is fake news is not seen well in this system. There are also images gathered from surveillance cameras. China is believed to own the world's largest camera network. It was expected to grow about more than 600 million cameras in 2020. but I haven't seen information if this goal was achieved. I'm sure that in 2014 there was about 150 million of cameras in public space. And those cameras are mostly connected with advanced technology, such as facial recognition technologies or tracking technologies. So there's a lot of data to fit this system. And it was when we have data and we have goals, it was time to build this system. The first pilot was launched in 2010 in Jiangsu city, and it ended as a total failure. It was so bad that even state media criticized it. It was sometimes compared with the solution used by Japanese occupants during the Second World War. Clearly, there are a lot of issues to address. For instance, how to describe trust in person with number, with description, with multiple traits, how to handle conflict of interest, because those who set rules are also affected, how to deal with bribery, because there was initially idea to improve your scores by donating money for charities or to Communist Party. There were also many design and implementation dilemmas, like to use predefined rules or some kind of artificial intelligence or machine learning solution, how to build so big distributed system to work efficiently, what kind of personal information should be stored as a result of processing, and how to handle data leaks. Taking into account all those difficulties, the government made two decisions. First one, to build many solutions to check which approach is better, and test those solutions on part of society. Small part of society means in China a few million of people. So it was more than many of European countries. I'm sure that at least 8 independent systems were created and tested. 43 pilot cities launched projects since 2014, and 24 cities were chosen as model cities to test as a test bed for national implementation of this credit system. You may come across different numbers because the social credit became such a catchphrase in China and is used by local authorities to enforce local initiatives, sometimes unrelated. Sometimes this term is used for private initiatives. So it's really hard to tell how many people were affected in those tests. And the most covered and most advanced system is WrongChain. The name comes from the city where it was introduced. All those systems were named from the cities or provinces of China. And in WrongChain, each resident initially starts with 1,000 points, and depending on their behavior, the scores changes, and every person or company can be assigned with a grade from AAA to D. And points are gained and lost based on central catalog of actions. This catalog is well known, is public, and at this point there are no artificial intelligence or in this system. For instance, having minor tax evasion make you lose 20 points, and donating blood can give you up to 30 points. After 2 years, 85% of participants are in area market in green. So they are considered creditworthy or exceptional creditworthy. The general, this system is focused on the rewards rather than penalties. Individuals, for instance, are given perks like discounted energy bills, lower fuel prices. They are able to forego deposits for rental properties or for renting bicycles. They can also have better travel deals. You might wonder why AAA level is marked in red. Red color has a positive connotation in China. So individuals who possess highest rating and are considered to be model citizens will find themselves or something called red list. And those who have low scores will be added to the blacklist. Courts and government agencies have created a vast number of topical blacklists of serious offenders. So it's possible to be listed on some kind of blacklist in spite of having a high score. It is a big difference between having a low score and being blacklisted by the government. And all those lists are available publicly. It is because public shaming in China is incredibly effective. In fact, it is more effective than court judgment. In China, there was a well-known term called mianzi. It is saving face. So people will more likely to pay the fine to pay their debts if they are threatened by being publicly known as a person who don't obey the rules. And Holdo's idea of blacklist were partially created because of inability to enforce judgments. A similar model is applied to businesses. This is a standardized reputation system for local and foreign companies. Sometimes it's called CSCS, a corporate social credit system. And this system touches all aspects of company business operation in China by assessing performance, obeying laws, paying taxes, uphold standard of services. And based on the rating, Chinese authorities will reward or punish businesses. But there are separate lists, blacklist and red list for individuals and companies. But there is also an overlap, because if company is blacklisted for severe untrustworthiness, and this action doesn't bring company to improve its behavior, the punishment can be also applied to the legal representatives of the company or to specific people directly responsible for violation. So it's possible to punish CEO of the company for the actions taken by this company. And sanctions can be severe, but research finds that only a small number of companies and individuals are affected. Here you can see the percent of entities affected by the sanctions. But bear in mind that China has a population of 1.4 billion and have more than 70 million registered companies. So this 1% of companies or 1/3% of individuals is still many million of entities. Main purpose of the SCS is generally deterrence effect through public nature of blacklist and reporting about punishment. In the past, offenders were sanctioned by one supervising agency of court, and now they are punished by joint operation of multiple agencies. So this greatly amplifies the effect of relatively not important sections. The gained experience proved that the carrots are better than stick. Only first pilots were focused on sanctions. And the nature of those benefits and sanctions is less serious than often reported in media. It is mostly about access to hotel, access to transport means, internet service, scholarship, being able to apply for a governmental job. So people with high rating will have discounted prices on services, and people with a lower rating will have to wait, for instance, to get their appointment to doctor, or pay more for some services, or simply can be banned for working for government. Imprisonment still have to be ordered by court. One of the most widely known example of blacklist was restricting of use high-speed rails and airplanes. Media frequently reported that in 2018, authorities banned between 4 and 20 million of citizens from using this kind of services. And this information is not exactly true, because the ban was not dependent on the score, but on court orders related to offenses and crimes committed by those people. And those crimes included usage of falsified documents, disturbing work of rail staff, initiating fights, or theft on public transport. And those people can still buy tickets for regular trains. So this ban from usage high-speed train and airplanes should be considered as a ban for access to luxury goods, since high-speed trains are considered luxury goods in China. Before I go to next chapter, I must mention that initially there was also third system, because in early part, the Chinese government envisioned participation from the tech giants and platforms in this system. Several payment and consumer platforms were created and used their own trust rating initiative. But eventually, all those private initiatives were excluded from development of governmental SCS. Most of them are still working, but they are working on agreement between customers and companies. We can treat them as loyalty programs on steroids. It's estimated that private projects collect data about 400 million of customers in China, and those data can be shared with other companies. For instance, the best known system, the Ziba credit or Sesame credit made by Alibaba company, is so ubiquitous that it's often mistaken with the governmental credit system. And this commercial system links up with the Chinese version of Tinder, links up with Chinese version of Uber, links up with Chinese version of restaurants. So the one who don't pay debts will have a hard time going on date. And all private systems are not mandatory, and a person must purposefully opt in and can always opt out from the systems. But they still share some similar reward mechanism as the official government system. And by the way, those similarities make research on the subject really hard, because journalists and researchers always often mistake private systems with public system. Interesting part of both private and public system is recognition by society, because survey shows that about 80% of respondents somewhat or strongly approves the social credit systems. And this approval is the biggest in social advantage citizens like wealthier people, better educated, urban residents. They perceive them as way to protect customers rather than as instrument of surveillance. For instance, in a context of frequent food safety scandals, local pilot systems are used to check if restaurants are considered trustworthy. So they abide the safety regulation of processing food. And about 65% of survey respondents stated that their purchasing decisions were influenced by the social credit of this restaurant. Or so social credit system can be also seen as a helpful mean to make think work and improve quality of life. It's worth to remember also that the Chinese citizens always know that the government know a lot about them. So digitizing this data and using it in a system, it's not as jarring as it would be for American or European citizen. Of course, future development of this system may impact how it's perceived, because one day citizen might find that they don't understand how this assessment is made, or can experience unfairness of assessment. Even today, SCS causes some side effect. For instance, illegal activities happen more offline. Untrustworthy people tend to move away from internet banking into cash. And some psychologists and sociologists doubt if idea of bringing trust, if it's possible to achieve this way, because people start to trust other people not because of their trait, but because of their number score or of their presence on black or red list. Last year, 2020, was marked as the end of K construction phase. Today we know that this deadline was missed. The general framework and some mechanism or concept have been tested. Numerous reports and documents have been drawn up, but whole system is still far from being ready. Sometimes the system is described as a full data-driven system, but this proclamation is not true. Whole SCS is still lacking digitalization in certain areas. In fact, as a whole system, it is the least digitized of China tech-driven monitoring and surveillance initiatives. Digitalization is often a little more than the use of Excel worksheets. This system still heavily relies on human investigation, reports, decisions. For instance, in a small town, Jiaquang Maria, one single person is responsible for rating all citizens. This individual, visible on this slide, is responsible for manually recording people's behavior, assigning points, adding them, processing, and then introducing those rating into integration to other system. There are also increasing indications that central authorities recognize the dangers of automation for administrative processes. And the law revised in January of this year expressed that digitally collected evidence should always require human evaluation. What is described today can be best described as a policy framework. that encompasses initiative, not a integrated system. Today, you still need for many fundamentals that are essential for high-tech systems. There are still no central government repository for receiving, standardizing, managing, coordinating, and analyzing data, both from government and corporate sources. And for instance, integration between even governmental agencies is still low, because blacklist databases are integrated on average in 25%. Even the most well-standardized databases failed to reach over 90% of completeness in integration with government standards. And currently there are more than 50 active programs, and those systems are largely incompatible with each other. There are no single nationally coordinated system. Pilots exist, works, but don't work the same way, don't talk each other. Implementation of these systems are impossible to find, but we can be sure that there are no usage of artificial intelligence, no usage of machine learning. Of course, system is surrounded by this buzzword, but there are no confirmed usage of these technologies. And even today, most of documents fixate rather on the basic needs, like constructing database, constructing platforms, and sharing information. They don't talk about much complicated means to process or gather this data. While we talk on sharing information, this is extremely fragile part of the system, because companies avoid sharing data with the government due to tremendous commercial and competitive value of this data. And even government ministries at the central and local levels often resist sharing data, because controlling data gives precious political power and influence. And this lack of even basic data sharing is one of the most overlooked roadblock to constructing the social credit system. And of course, this connecting databases containing sensitive information will make this system much more vulnerable to hacking, because putting information about millions of, even billions of entities will for sure attract hackers, even private or maybe government supported. So I think that breaches will occur no matter how many cybersecurities there will be in place. And without this data sharing, this system lost of this point, because one of the reasons is to track bad behavior of people or companies between the different provinces of country. So the tracking of actors between various locations is essential for the system. There are also problems with identifying of identities, because currently there is still a physical national ID card used, and this system is old and it was never designed to meet the massive new requirements of the digital age. And there are no established initiative to replace this physical ID with some kind of digital solution. A private sector is developing the number of solutions, like for instance, using IDs from WeChat service, but national authorities will not allow using commercial entity. And of course, there are a lot of fundamental law challenges, like for instance, the system is still regulated by thousands of documents, but still there are no clear definition what the credit is. And substantial regional differences exist in implementation and evaluation standard. Chinese government is aware of these issues and wants to establish practice to improve the measures for this system. Work on changing laws started, but as you know, creating law is difficult. So it may take several years until these mechanisms will be standardized, nationwide, and described by law. If the social credit system becomes as comprehensive as planned, it for sure will be the largest scale and complex project undertaken in history. But I think we should not take the value claims such ambition plans can be achieved on time or can be achieved at all. As we heard, there are a lot of challenges, a lot of problems, and all those tasks require extraordinary coordination between parties which have conflict objectives, because all of them want to protect access to their own data, and those parties, even governmental ones, generally don't trust each other. And this is all inside the China. It's not clear how the SCS impact overseas living Chinese or those companies who are registered in China but work abroad. Of course, I think that China's credit system can influence other authoritarian regimes. Most of these regimes are less technological capable, but usage of smartphones, internet for communication and financial transaction make the surveillance made by government a bit easier. So maybe let's take a look how those similar solutions look in different countries, mostly in developed Western countries. Currently, there are no comprehensive system being developed or implemented in Western democratic countries, but the concept of surveillance is not unfamiliar. For instance, in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia, they are implementing changes on additional surveillance industries and legislators, and the same debate continue about citizen privacy and the right relation to the data. And there is also present something called rating culture in many countries. Because, for instance, in USA, there is a FICO algorithm used to determine credit score. Also in USA, there's a company called Affirm, which uses scanning of social media platform to check if one is worthy of loan. In Australia, Lodex company predicts likelihood of loan repayment based through analysis of usage of smartphone and usage of emails. Also in Australia, there are companies that offer discount on the life insurance based on sharing data from fitness tracking devices. In Germany, a Schufa company uses geoscoring for credit rating.
So if you live in neighborhood when a lot of people don't pay their mortgage, you will probably have a hard time for getting a credit. And even here in Poland, there is a well-known company Janosik, which offers lower insurance payment for careful drivers who use tracking application and decided to share their data. And well, Western countries are awakening to uses and abuses of privately collected data. And this data is core part of this most innovation project. And but still, most of this morally vague activities is still perfectly legal, because it's legal according to GDPR. It's legal according to Convention 108 of European Union. To be fair, I have to mention that in the beginning of April, European Union stated intention to forbid using artificial intelligence to score citizens by governments. But as I said before, China's social credit system is made without AI, so this regulation is not a big deal at this moment. And as a final thought, I have no doubt that the social credit system in China will be eventually abused for social control and punishing. It is because of this nature of Chinese government and Chinese Communist Party. But in theory, in different countries, well-governed social credit system can bring some transparency or at least regulate economy. I know that most people would not agree with such approach, but some other can see this as even utopian use of technology to promote good citizenship. And it's a question for you today. Where do you stand? And I leave you with this question. You can answer it on your own. Hopefully you all enjoyed this presentation. Thanks for watching, and we are going back to studio.